welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to untangle the world of cloud testing and SaaS testing.
That sounds good.
Now, even if you're not, super technical, if you've ever used an app, checked the weather, streamed a movie, stored photos online, this stuff, it really impacts how well those services work for you.
Absolutely. I mean, we're surrounded by cloud computing, right? Think of it as this huge network of computers, all accessible over the internet, providing all sorts of services remotely.
Okay.
And these services, they generally fall into a few main types. You've got infrastructure as a service, that's like renting the basics, servers, storage, that kind of thing.
Right, the foundations.
Exactly. Then there's platform as a service, which gives developers a ready-made place to build and run their apps.
Gotcha.
And the big one for us today, software as a service, or SaaS. That's your Gmail, your Netflix, countless web apps you use daily.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We've got our sources here, and our mission really is to pull out the crucial bits about cloud testing, especially how it makes sure those SaaS apps, the ones you count on, actually work smoothly and securely.
Definitely securely.
We want to take this potentially complex topic, make it clear, maybe even find a few surprises, and basically give you a shortcut to understanding this really vital part of tech. So first things first, what is cloud testing?
Well, in essence, cloud testing is pretty much what it sounds like. Testing software applications, but doing it using cloud computing services.
So instead of just using your own company's gear.
Exactly. Instead of only relying on your own hardware and software for testing, you tap into those remote resources offered by cloud providers.
And why do it that way? What's the core benefit? Why move testing to the cloud instead of the old in-house methods?
The big advantages are really speed, scalability, and flexibility. Cloud testing lets you set up test environments much, much faster.
Faster setup, okay.
Yeah, and you can scale them up for heavy testing, then scale back down when you don't need them. That agility, it ultimately saves a lot of time and cost.
Right.
Think of it like instead of building a whole test track every time you design a new bike, you can just instantly rent and configure a virtual track in the cloud for exactly as long as you need it.
That makes a lot of sense. Avoids all that setup overhead. Now, our sources talk about 4 main categories of cloud testing. What are those different types actually looking at?
Right. So the first one is testing of the whole cloud. This is kind of the big picture view, looking at the overall features, the capabilities, the reliability of an entire cloud platform.
Who cares about that level?
Well, naturally the cloud vendors themselves, but also SaaS providers who build on those platforms, and even, end users like you who depend on them. Everyone has an interest there. Then you've got testing within a cloud. This drills down more into the internal bits, the features and functions inside a specific cloud environment. This is mostly done by the cloud vendors themselves, making sure their own house is in order, basically.
Makes sense. So that's 2. What about the others?
The third is testing across cloud. This is where you look at how apps and services perform when they have to talk to different types of clouds.
Like public and private clouds.
Exactly. How do they work together smoothly? This is super important for businesses using multiple clouds, to avoid getting locked into one provider.
All right, keeping options open.
Yeah, ensuring that smooth interaction and data flow between them is a big job. And finally, number 4 is SaaS testing in cloud. This is our main focus, like you said. It looks specifically at the functional side. Does the app do what it should? And the non-functional side, like performance, security, all tailored to what that specific SaaS app needs.
Which brings us right back to our core topic. So let's get really specific now. What exactly is SaaS testing in practical terms?
Okay, so SaaS testing is really the dedicated process for testing software built using that software as a service model. Just like any good software testing, it checks both the application's functionality, do the features work right, and those non-functional things like how well it performs, how secure it is it easy to use, and so on.
And the end goal for all this testing is just ensuring a good quality experience for the user.
Precisely. SaaS testing is all about guaranteeing the app is solid, reliable, that your data is safe, that it runs efficiently, even when lots of people are using it, that it works on different devices people use, and that it can scale up easily if usage grows.
Okay.
Our source material points out 3 core components in the cloud environment that usually get put through their paces with testing.
All right, what are those components?
First up, the application itself. This means really checking its core features, the entire workflows a user goes through, how well data inside the app is protected, and critically, does it work properly across different web browsers people might be using.
Browser compatibility, yeah, that's always a fun one.
Tell me about it. Second is the network. Here, testers are looking at things like bandwidth, the communication protocols, the rules for sending data, and is that data actually getting transferred reliably without errors?
Okay. App, network. What's the third?
The third is the infrastructure. This covers a lot: testing disaster recovery plans. What happens if something goes wrong? How good are the data backups? How secure are the connections to the cloud? What are the rules for storing data? And making sure everything complies with regulations.
Wow, okay. So it's way more than just clicking buttons on the screen. It's the whole engine underneath.
Exactly. And on top of those basic components, there are several other specialized kinds of testing that are really crucial in the cloud.
Like,
Things like performance testing, making sure it's snappy,
yeah.
availability testing, is it actually up and running when you need it, compliance testing for legal stuff, security testing, obviously, finding and fixing weak spots. Scalability testing, can it handle more users?
You mentioned multi-tenancy before.
Right, multi-tenancy testing, that's vital. It ensures different users' data is totally separate and secure, like secure apartments in one building. And even live upgrade testing, making sure software updates don't mess things up for people already using it.
It really sounds like this intricate web of tests that have to happen. So how is all this cloud testing actually done? What kinds of tasks are involved day to day?
Well, our source breaks it down into three main kinds of cloud testing tasks. First is what they call SaaS, or cloud-oriented testing.
Okay.
This is usually done by the vendors themselves, the cloud providers or the SaaS companies. They're basically doing quality control on their own service.
Makes sense.
It covers a whole range, from integration testing, making sure different parts work together, to functional, security, unit testing, system validation, regression testing.
Regression testing. What's that again?
Regression testing basically makes sure that when you add something new or fix something, you haven't accidentally broken something else that used to work.
Right.
Very important, crucial. And of course, this first category also includes tough performance and scalability tests to handle real-world use.
Okay, so that's what the providers do. What about the other types of testing tasks?
The second type is online-based application testing on a cloud. This is more for companies whose online apps might need to connect with older legacy systems. They test the performance and function of their cloud services, paying close attention to how well they talk to those older systems.
Got it. Interacting with the old stuff.
Exactly. And the third category is cloud-based application testing over clouds. This focuses on checking the quality and reliability when an application has to work across different cloud environments.
Okay, this is painting a really clear picture of the different angles. But, to really get a feel for it, could you walk us through some specific examples? What do these tests actually look like in practice?
Absolutely. Let's start with performance testing. Think about using an online service when it's super busy, right?
Yeah, peak times.
A critical test is making sure that what one person is doing doesn't totally bog down the experience for everyone else. Also, many cloud systems scale up automatically when they get busy. Performance testing checks that the scaling happens smoothly without interruptions.
Oh.
You'd also test to make sure the app performs well on different devices, desktop, tablet, phone, and that, hiccups on the provider's end don't cause massive outages for users.
That makes total sense. We've all hit those slow websites. What about security testing? That always feels like the big one when our data's online.
Oh, it's absolutely paramount. Security tests are all about protecting your data. Examples would be checking that only authorized users can access specific info, that sensitive data is encrypted.
Scrambled up, basically.
Exactly, unreadable to anyone else. Making sure that when data should be deleted, it's gone completely irretrievably. Testers also try to access data without the right encryption to make sure it's blocked, and check that even the provider's own admins have limits on accessing customer data.
Right.
And of course, testing the basics like firewalls, VPNs, antivirus setups, all that gets checked rigorously.
Yeah, it's scary to think what could happen if that wasn't done well. Okay, moving on. Functional testing. What are some examples there?
Functional tests are about, does the app actually do what it's supposed to? So verifying that if you put in valid info, you get the right result back. Does it integrate properly with other apps it needs to connect to?
Like sharing data between services.
Right. Does it show your correct account type when you log in? Even small things, like if you switch between different services in an app, does the previous one shut down cleanly?
Little things, but
Yeah.
super annoying if they don't work. What about making sure different systems and platforms play nicely together?
That falls under interoperability and compatibility testing. This means validating the app meets the tech requirements for different systems, checking it works across different browsers.
Ugh, browsers again.
Yeah. Identifying connection glitches, making sure the app handles incomplete data gracefully without crashing, verifying it works across different cloud platforms if that's needed, and even testing it in-house first before rolling it out to the cloud.
Okay. And ensuring the actual pipe to the cloud is stable.
That's network testing. Testing the underlying connection protocols, making sure data doesn't get corrupted during transfer, ensuring a stable network connection exists, and even checking if firewalls are accidentally blocking good data.
Right. And finally, handling the real-world thousands, maybe millions of users hitting it at once.
Exactly. That's where load and stress testing come in. Load testing checks performance under normal expected user numbers. Stress testing pushes it beyond normal limits to find the breaking points. This helps find those sneaky defects that only show up under heavy strain and understand how the system behaves as load increases. It also helps ensure it stays stable over the long haul, even under high demand.
So with all this testing, it sounds like things should generally run pretty smoothly. But our sources also point out some pretty big challenges with cloud testing. What are some of those hurdles, and why should we as users care about them?
That's a really key question because these challenges often directly impact your data security and your overall experience. The first big one is data security and privacy.
Right.
Because many cloud apps are multi-tenant, meaning lots of different users or companies share the same underlying infrastructure. There's always a potential risk of data breaches or someone seeing something they shouldn't. As a user, you need strong guarantees from the providers that your data is not just secure, but totally isolated from others on the same system. That's why rigorous testing is needed to prevent, seeing someone else's files in your storage.
Definitely a top worry for anyone online. What's another challenge testers face?
Another tricky one is the short notice period for upgrades. Cloud providers often roll out updates pretty quickly, sometimes with only a week or two notice.
That doesn't sound like much time.
It's not. It puts pressure on companies using those services because they have to scramble to test and make sure the update didn't break their own apps. For you, the end user, this can sometimes mean temporary service glitches or sudden changes in how an app looks or works.
Yeah, those sudden interface changes can be jarring. Our sources also mentioned validating interface compatibility. Why is that a challenge?
Well, when providers update the user interface, how you interact with the app, it can cause problems for people used to the old way. Ideally, maybe users get a choice for a while, right?
That'd be nice.
But testing to ensure the app works perfectly with both the old and new interfaces at the same time adds a lot of complexity. You might log in and find buttons moved, workflows changed, and suddenly you have to relearn things.
Frustrating. We've also heard data migration is tough. How does that fit into testing challenges?
Moving huge amounts of data between different cloud providers can be a really big technical job, partly because they might use different database systems or ways of structuring data.
Different plumbing.
Kind of, yeah. So thorough testing during any migration is absolutely critical to make sure all your data gets moved accurately, securely, without anything getting lost or corrupted. You want confidence that if a service you use switches providers, your data makes the trip safely.
Absolutely essential. What other challenges are there?
Enterprise application integration is another big one. Businesses often use a mix of different cloud apps, plus maybe some apps still running on their own servers.
A complex web.
Very. Making sure data flows smoothly and securely between all these systems in and out of the SaaS app is vital for both function and privacy. You definitely don't want sensitive info leaking as it moves around.
No kidding. And the last challenge mentioned was simulating live upgrade testing. Why is that so hard?
It's really tricky because you need to guarantee that when an update goes live to the system everyone is actually using right now, it doesn't cause interruptions or problems for people actively working on it.
Yeah, testing on a live system sounds risky.
Well, you try to replicate it as closely as possible in a test environment, but accurately mimicking that real-world live scenario with all its variables is incredibly complex. But you have to try, because minimizing disruption for end users like you is the goal.
These challenges really drive home that cloud testing isn't just, tweaking traditional testing, which leads perfectly to our next point. What are the really key differences between cloud testing and conventional old-school software testing?
Yeah, there are some fundamental differences. The primary testing objective is one. Conventional testing often focuses on things like interoperability between components, compatibility with different operating systems or hardware, and just general usability. Cloud testing, though, is specifically focused on validating the performance, security, and function of SaaS apps and cloud services by using the cloud environment itself for testing.
So where the testing happens is key.
Absolutely. And testing costs are another big difference. Traditional testing often means big upfront costs, hardware, software licenses, setting up labs.
A capital investment.
Exactly. Cloud testing is usually pay as you go. You only pay for the resources you use while you're testing. It offers way more flexibility and can be cheaper.
Sounds much more adaptable. What about how the testing is actually done?
Well, for test simulation, both might try to mimic real user traffic, but when you look at functional testing, conventional methods often test individual modules or the system architecture. Cloud testing really emphasizes testing the end-to-end application function within that SaaS or cloud context.
And the actual testing environment itself, quite different, right?
Yeah, totally. Conventional testing usually happens in a fixed, controlled lab. You know exactly what's there. Cloud testing uses open, public cloud environments with a huge, diverse range of resources. That variability is both powerful and a unique testing challenge.
How about getting different parts of the system to work together? Integration.
Good point. For integration testing, traditional methods look at components, architecture, functions interacting. Cloud testing is more SaaS-focused. How do different SaaS apps integrate with each other and other systems in the cloud ecosystem?
Okay. And finally, the big one, security. How does security testing compare?
Security testing in a conventional setup often looks at the organization's own processes, servers, data privacy within their walls. Cloud security testing has to tackle the unique vulnerabilities of cloud and SaaS environments directly, often doing real-time tests right inside the provider's cloud.
And performance. Scalability.
Right, performance and scalability testing. Traditional testing uses those fixed environments. Cloud testing can leverage real-time and virtual online data to simulate a much wider range of loads and stresses, reflecting the real world much better.
Okay, this deep dive has really shown a light on what cloud and SaaS testing actually involve and how they're different. So as we start to wrap up, what are the absolute key takeaways listeners should hold on to?
I think the most vital point is just understanding that cloud testing isn't optional anymore. It's absolutely essential for guaranteeing the quality, the security, the reliability of all these online services that are, frankly, running huge parts of our lives now.
Yeah.
We've definitely seen this major shift away from traditional methods to specifically handle the unique challenges and nature of the cloud.
And the aha moments for me were really getting the sheer variety of testing involved, everything from basic function to hardcore performance and security, and even making sure different systems talk to each other. Understanding the specific challenges of the cloud and those key differences from traditional testing really shows this is a specialized, critical field.
Exactly. And hopefully you, the listener, now have a clearer picture of the often invisible work that goes on behind the scenes to make sure you have a smooth, secure experience with cloud services.
Right.
Grasping these ideas gives you real insight into why software works the way it does and all the factors affecting its performance and security.
So as we close out this deep dive on cloud and SaaS testing, let's leave you with this thought. We rely more and more on cloud services for, well, almost everything, don't we?
We really do.
So what does that mean for the future of testing? How does the industry keep ensuring these complex, vital platforms remain trustworthy? And maybe more personally, what questions does this raise for you about the services you use every day? Definitely is something to chew on until our next deep dive.
CTSS.